happy Sunday to you. We had a really, it was kind of an interesting morning getting things working. Printer wouldn't work this morning at the house, and got here and the printer wouldn't work. But I finally, there's a way, Working together, was able to send it off to someone else and put it, and they were able to print it off. So, it's amazing what we can do when we work together. That's kind of the theme of what we're talking about today, isn't it? Thank you, God. It was a fantastic day yesterday, and I want to thank everybody that was there and was able to be a part of it and to celebrate with us. And we're going to do more of those sort of things. It's always valuable to celebrate breakthroughs and experiences and anniversaries and just celebrate life, really. We have so many opportunities to look around us and see that there are a lot of things that we don't celebrate, and there's pain in this world, and you guys are very aware of that. We had. And I guess I'm still kind of reeling from it, from the events in South Carolina. And there are many other things that have gone on in the world today that are painful and that are not what we want to see happening in our lives or in the world. And so I think it really, to me, calls us even more and even more deeply to look at and work out and find ways of creating not only peace out in the world, but peace within ourselves. And not only peace within ourselves, but then taking that and being able to take specific steps to be able to help create even more peace in the world. Well, I want to certainly acknowledge that this is a very special day also. And I want to acknowledge it's a special day to honor fathers. And we acknowledge and honor all of you who are fathers, and all of those of you who have fathers, we honor you as well. It's important. Fatherhood is a very powerful place in our society. It's a powerful place in the world. And the things that fathers can do and bring to us are things that can't be brought in any other relationship. And so we really want to pay attention to that and honor the father, both the males that are fathers and also the father spirit that is within us, to honor the guiding principles of spiritual fatherhood that I think can really help us to really understand how we can really experience life more fully within ourselves, and also to be very clear in helping to make the world a better place. I always like to start off with something a little light, though, and so I'm going to shift gears a little bit and tell you a story. We fathers have a wonderful place in life, and I came across this story of a man who went to the doctor. He was a father, and he said, the doctor said to him, you're really in terrible shape. You've got to do something about it. He says, first thing you got to do is you got to go and tell your wife to start cooking more nutritious meals, and you got to stop working so hard. You got to stop working like a dog all the time, and you also need to inform your wife that you're going to make a budget, and that she's got to stick to it, and in the evening she's got to be there to make sure that the kids are off your back so that you can relax. And unless you make some of these changes, I'm telling you, you're probably going to be dead within a month. And the man said, a month, 30 days? And he said, that's not very long. He said, but Doc, it would feel like a little more official if you would talk to my wife yourself and tell her these things. And the doctor said, well, okay. And so he gave the wife a call and gave her the instructions. And so when the man came home, his wife rushed in and just hugged his neck and was crying. He says, oh, I'm so sorry. You only have 30 days. But I'm up. Should have known something like that was coming. Yeah. Well, one of my favorite philosophers and teachers, and I learned a lot from this very, very, very spiritual man, a very spiritual man. One of my favorites growing up was a very deep spiritual teacher named Red Skelton. Some of you may be familiar with Red. But one of the things he encouraged all parents really, but fathers especially, he said very clearly, never raise your hands to your kids because it leaves you growing unprotected. And then, of course, it's important to realize, according to Lionel Kaufman, he said that children are a great comfort in your old age, and they're very helpful in helping you reach it much faster. So, we make light and we make fun, but I think it's valuable for us to also hold an energy of lightness as well in life and in the world. And so I think we're here to really help each other to grow into greater possibilities in each and every day of our life to make a difference, to make a positive difference. I think we're called to do that in some way almost every day. And there are opportunities, and when we think about the situation that happened in South Carolina, it's horrific. It is just nothing, there's nothing that can really rationalize or explain the horrificness of such an act. There's something that really does touch and hit every one of us when we hear about not just that particular experience, all as horrific as that is, but this is we know it's not an isolated experience. We know that this is something that is in the race consciousness in some way. And there's something that really does need to fundamentally shift. It needs to fundamentally shift in our race consciousness. And I'm a firm believer that you and I are a part of that we have a responsibility to all of the things that happen out here in our lives and our world in some way. When I say responsibility, I really think it means the ability to respond. And so I think it's valuable for us to think about how do we respond to such circumstances? How do we respond and not just simply react? How do we respond and not come from the same kinds of energies or the same kinds of fears or frustrations or angers or hatred that are out there in the world? And we become so triggered at times when we look at these circumstances that we tend to respond in many ways in the same energy that we're responding against. You know what I'm talking about? When we find that people are dealing with fear and dealing with hatred, it can easily stir up our own fears and hatred, can it? And I think that's one of the things that we have to really pay attention to and guard against, is to really not allow ourselves to move into, even if we do move into it, to be willing to do what's necessary to move out of the fear and the hatred. That, to me, is really a big piece of what we're being taught in these spiritual teachings of Jesus and all of the great teachers. We're being taught how we can not be conformed to the world. Don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your hearts and minds. And when we have situations and circumstances that come up and that we have to face that we just can't really comprehend on a logical, rational level, one of the most significant things we can do is move to the heart level and try and keep our hearts clear and open and filled with an energy that is different, not necessarily counter to, but different than what we are witnessing and what we're seeing out in life. I think about this, and I think about, my lesson today is kind of a coming together of the series that we've been talking about, and also honoring the energy and the consciousness of fatherhood. And to me, our spiritual community that we build is probably one of the most important and valuable, significant gifts that we can share in helping to make the world a little bit better, and to be able to uplift the energy and the vibration from that place of fear and hatred. And bringing ourselves together in community is absolutely an act of grace, an act of love, an act of spirituality. I really don't think that we can really grow into the truth and wholeness of who and what we are unless we are surrounding ourselves with those that are helping to not only lift us up, but to be lifted as well by them. And for us to lift them up as well, to make a difference in that way. I came across a wonderful quote from a man named Larry Crabb. It's a book called The Safest Place on Earth. And I'll be honest, I haven't actually read the book yet, but that's one on my list. But I love what he says. He says the difference between spiritual and unspiritual community is not whether conflict exists, but is rather an attitude toward an approach to handling it. When conflict is seen as an opportunity to draw more fully on our spiritual resources, we have the makings of spiritual community. Let me read that last part again, because I think it's such an important, valuable awareness. When conflict is seen as an opportunity to draw more fully on our own spiritual resources, we have the makings of spiritual community. It's one of the things I have to say that I do appreciate and love about Unity in the Heart of Austin, and Unity in general, is that really is an understanding that in our community, in our coming together, we actually strengthen each other by pulling forth those things within ourselves that are more in alignment with the essence of who and what we are. And then the other side of it is we recognize when we're not in that place, when we get triggered by someone in the community, we recognize that that's there for a purpose as well, and that's to help us to draw on those spiritual resources as well. Wouldn't you agree? So we have an understanding that we do get triggered by personality and by differences, and we sometimes don't feel like we're in alignment or harmony with someone in a community, but we also know that that's not the essence of who and what we are, and that's not the essence of who and what they are either. And part of our work is to draw forth those energies within ourselves, those feelings, that consciousness that allows us to see beyond the differences and come into some place of communion and harmony and alignment. Not necessarily agreement always, but at least coming into alignment, that there's something higher that's possible. There's a solution that can really solve our situations and circumstances and problems in life. So part of the reason why I think this is valuable in terms of talking with fathers is that I do believe that fathers have a very powerful and important, significant role in community. I came across some research which is really fascinating to me, and I'm still kind of playing with it and trying to comprehend the fullness of it, but there's a real powerful message that came out. It's research that was done, I believe, at the University in Bern, Switzerland. And they examined parents specifically and their religious habits and what that did, or was that really transmitted to their offspring in some way. And so the study was really had different variables, and one critical variable was the difference between whether children of a particular practice or habit, if they, when they grew up, held those same habits or those same practices, or they carried them on in some way once they were adults. And here's some of the findings they found, which I think I'm still listening to, and the results were somewhat shocking. The habits of the mother had almost no influence over their kids' future devotion. And that really kind of surprised me and shocked me a little bit. I'm not sure I totally agree with all their findings, but I want to give you some of the results that they were talking about. It says, when mom goes to church regularly but dad goes infrequently, just 3% of their kids go on to become regular churchgoers. 3%. When mom is regular but dad never attends, just 2% become regular attendees. Now let's flip the scenario. What if dad is someone who is, faithful or has a spiritual practice? When both mom and dad attend church regularly, 33% of kids grow up to attend regularly. When dad is regular, but mom only goes once in a while, the figure actually jumps to 38%. So I say this because I want the men in the room, the fathers in the room, to understand how important and how significant you are to the spiritual life of your child. They will follow you. They'll listen to mom, for the most part, but they're going to follow your example. I need you to really, I think it's important for all of us to really think about that, especially us fathers. And I have to say, there's some magnificent, wonderful fathers in this group, and we're blessed to have some fathers who are aware and committed to their spirituality and committed to their understanding of themselves and of life and of spirit, and to really trying to really live to that place where they can allow their own children to know that there's something that is more important than Nintendo or Xbox, or that there's something greater than the pressure from their peers. So I came across some wonderful tips for all of us guys, for all of us men. If a dad leads by example, children are 20 times more likely to become spiritually committed themselves. So it's valuable for us to understand that. And so here's some tips that maybe will be worthwhile for us as men. And it's actually valuable for all of us to hear these things, I think. Number one, one of the most important things you can do for your children is to love their mother. It is absolutely one of the most valuable things that you can do for any relationship, is to make sure that your relationship is one that is really healing and growing and unfolding in a way that really does enhance your example to your children. It says an amazing amount to your sons. It says an incredible amount to your daughters. Next thing, number two, don't expect your children to be perfect. And I would add to that, don't expect yourself to be perfect in that, but don't expect your children to be perfect. Fathers, don't make children resentful by becoming, expecting them to be something more than they are or can be. Certainly expect the best from them, but also recognize that they're human and they're going to make mistakes just as you are. Number three, enjoy your children. Have fun with them. Play. It's so important for us to honor children as children, and at times to become one with them and go out and have fun. Now that's a little easier for us guys, I think, than it is for the ladies sometimes, but that's an important aspect of being a father. 4, listen to your children. Listen to them. Not only be willing to be teachers and trainers, but be willing to learn from your children. They have so many wonderful things to give to us. 5 is very common and very traditional, and that is to provide for your children. 6, train your children, but as I said before, make sure that you're also learning from them. 7, pray for yourself, because you're going to need it. But also pray for them. Pray for your children. Pray for them as we talk about in unity in a positive way. When I say pray for them, hold them in the highest light. See them being successful. See them being happy. See them being fulfilled. See them overcoming their challenges. See them having the power of that divine spark within them to overcome and to learn and grow through whatever challenges are going through them. But of course, be there for them also in order to help them in the ways that you can be there for them. 9, be a positive influence and role model. That's, just they are going to follow examples as much, if not more, probably more than, I remember one of the things that my father taught me was, and it's actually more my parents in general. You guys, I know this saying, do as I say, not as I do. You ever heard that one? That never stuck. Did it stick with you? It doesn't. So we're going to tend to do pretty much the same kinds of things and have the same kinds of energy, or we're going to find ourselves reacting to the energy and the consciousness that went on with our parents. So either way, our parents are going to influence in some form, in some way. And then number 10, prepare your children. Prepare them for the possibilities of what they are capable of, and help them to grow into a richer understanding of who and what they are. Help them to grow into a real awareness of their own possibilities for making a difference, not only in their own lives, but in the lives of people around them. So I'm kind of going to get back to our Steve, would you turn on our video of the agreeing and disagreeing in love covenants? We've been covering these 12 principles, and these are biblical principles, spiritual principles that are about helping us in community, but also they're really valuable about helping us in not just community, but also just in our relationships in general. And two of the key ones I want to talk about that we kind of covered before are that when we have a challenge or conflict in a situation, that we go to the other person that we have the conflict with and not go to everybody else. And that's really valuable. That's a mature way of working with this kind of energy. And it helps to be, coming from a place of humility, coming from a place of openness and willingness to learn, willingness to discover what's possible in that relationship and what's possible to resolve whatever the conflict might be. And then the last three that we're going to cover a little bit today is we're open to peacemaking. Now this document, for those of you who were not here before, this document is actually an agreement that our leadership has agreed to, that this is how we have committed to working when we find ourselves in disagreement with each other. We don't find ourselves in disagreement a whole lot, but we find that if we're not seeing things eye to eye, we go back to these principles and we're able to come up with a way that we can come to an agreement with each other in a way that can make a powerful, positive difference for ourselves and for those around us. And it's a great lesson in how we can do that in all of our relationships. And the attitudes that we hold about this can really help to shift the energies of any particular disagreement that we might have. So number 12, we're open to peacemaking. There's an energy and a consciousness that, I said 12, I meant 10. We are open to getting help when we find ourselves in a place where we're not able to come to that place where we can agree. There are people who are very well trained in unity and actually even in this community that can help to see a different perception perhaps. And so sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where you're in a disagreement and you've gone through all of the other steps and it doesn't seem, so let me be clear here. It doesn't seem that you're coming to a win-win solution. Let me clarify here. It's not about you getting your way. If you find that you're not getting your way, then you really haven't done the other 9 steps. If you find that you need to get your way, you need to go back and start at the beginning again. It's not about getting your way. It's not about being right. It's not about getting what you want. It's about coming up with a solution that will be a win-win for all that are involved in it. And if you are willing to come from that place, you will find that it will be a win for you. But it may not look exactly the way you thought it had to be. Does that make sense? And so when you find yourself in that place, you need to go back and look at the other principles and ask yourself, is it that I'm really here to be right, or is it that I'm here to help us move into a place, all of us, of rightness, of good, of a benefit, of a blessing in some way? And so just the attitude of willing to be a peacemaker is an important, significant energy about that. We are open to accept help when we're not able to get to that place. So one of the scriptures that he talks about here is in the book of Acts 15. And one of the ways that the early Christians worked with was that if you had two people who had a disagreement, they would then not ask the other person to change, but they would come and they would ask the community to come together and help them to come to an agreement, help them to see differently, help them to come to a place. So sometimes there's a collective awareness that can be greater than the individuals involved. The example that I have is that if I take 2 pencils and I tie them together, I could probably break those 2 pencils, couldn't I? It's a good chance. Even if there's 1 pencil, I know I could break it. But if I've got 2 pencils, there's a good chance that I can break those. But if I bring together 4 or 5 pencils and bind them together, how hard do you think it's going to be for me to break those pencils? The similar kind of energy, there's a collective energy and a collective consciousness that we're all a part of. And if we're willing to come together as a community, what we'll find is that there is a strength in awareness, a strength of consciousness, a strength of understanding, a strength of compassion for that matter, that will help move us into a greater possibility of good. Studies have been shown that you can take one person and they will take a test and they'll score a certain score, but if you bring together 5 people and they all take that same test together, their score goes up exponentially. It goes up significantly. So you've heard that saying, 2 minds are greater than one. Well, sometimes 5 minds are greater than 2. There is an energy and a consciousness when we collectively come together to work on and to resolve a particular circumstance or situation. And so when we come together, let's bring our gifts together, and especially to connect with those who have some skills in bringing about peace in a particular situation. So the next one is we trust the spiritual community. We still have the old name here, Downtown Unity Circle. We actually just signed a new one just the other night, and it'll be up here shortly, that says Unity in the Heart of Austin. But we trust that this community is really, there's a wisdom in this community. And so we're willing to come to the community and be guided by the collective consciousness of all of us coming together and know that there's a higher good working through that. Spirit works through that coming together. Well, I think about this in terms of even just our individual relationships also. And when we find ourselves in conflict with our spouse, with our children, with our boss, it's valuable sometimes to have other perspectives that are of an awareness of peacemaking, of how you can come into a place of peace, and calling on those people who are skilled and in doing that. And that may be counselors, it may be social workers, it may be someone that you hire to help you in resolving a particular situation. But you don't just keep holding on and trying to get the win for yourself. You hire or bring into your energy someone who can have a different perception, a different perspective, and help you to come to a place of resolution for yourself as well. And then the last one, we seek to be an expression of Christ. We seek to be an expression of Christ. And to me, that really speaks of trying to draw upon the very highest that we can within ourselves, so that we are seeing not only this person through the eyes of one who understands their wholeness and their oneness in spirit, but we're to put on that same energy, that same way of thinking, that same way of looking, that same way of understanding, that same way of recognition that the Father and I are one, you and I are one, that we may be perfectly one. So these are the different principles that we're talking about. I think it's very powerful for us to celebrate and talk about this on Father's Day because, gentlemen, you do have a very powerful influence, and if we as fathers can begin to work with some of these understandings and awarenesses even more, the more we can practice these and learn to be in that place of peace ourselves, the more we're going to be an instrument of that peace to our children, and maybe, just maybe, no, I'm not going to say maybe, I'm going to say definitely, we will begin to release, to eliminate, to change the energy and the consciousness of the human race so that we're no longer hurting each other the way we oftentimes see out in the world. We have a powerful role to play, but we also know that there's something greater that is within each and every one of us that can lift us and can guide us and can move us in a way that we can help to be the peace that we want to see in the world. That is a big calling, isn't it? It's one that we're up to. I absolutely know it. It's one that you're up to. And so I invite you to just hear within your heart and ask yourself, am I willing to be the peace that I choose to see in the world? Am I willing to work through my own challenges and difficulties in such a way that I can show up in life being the peace? It's a powerful calling, but it's a powerful gift, not only to ourselves, but to our world. Let's move into our meditation time. So I invite you to take a nice deep breath. Breathe into the heart space. And as you breathe in and out, allow yourself to be open, receptive to knowing and feeling the presence and the power of Spirit in your heart, one of my great inspirations has always been Dr. Martin Luther King. And Dr. King said, you cannot drive out darkness with darkness. Only light can do that. And so let's take this time to let our hearts be open to the light within ourselves, to the light that we see in our brothers and sisters that share that light with each other and with us, to those who go before us, who have been beacons of light. In your heart and mind, I invite you to be willing to step more fully into the light of love, of Spirit, let your heart expand in that energy of light. And if you become aware of a place of darkness, either within yourself or one that you see out in the world, will you take this time now to let the energy of love pour forth, of forgiveness, but of courage also, to stand in the truth, to speak the truth, to hold to the truth, that we are truly connected. We are truly expressions of that one light, that one power, that one presence that is everywhere present, that is always there to lift us up, to heal, to transform, to bless, to prosper. Breathe into that space of peace. Peace. Be still and know that I, the I am, is God. In the stillness and in the silence. In the words of our master teacher, our way shower, our friend Jesus the Christ, peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world gives. Peace. Peace. Let your heart be filled with a willingness and openness to not only feel that peace, but to stay in that place or return to it when necessary, of knowing the peace that passes all understanding, that is beyond the world, but is the light of the world. Take a nice deep breath now. Let your awareness be in this room, this time and place, with your heart filled with that experience, that feeling, that willingness to be the peace. And so it is. Amen.